Okay, welcome everybody for this afternoon's continuing talk on meditation, basically mindfulness and kindness and how useful it can be. But to start off with, I was doing the talking beforehand, and did you all follow the instructions okay and carry on meditating till 1:30? No. So first of all, I thought it'd be wonderful to see if there's any questions, first of all, about what I was saying at the beginning. Does anybody have any questions about what I was saying earlier about using mindfulness for healing of the body? Well, you're so efficient here. Here we go. Here we go. Meditation question. Yesterday you mentioned Ajahn Chah's simile of pouring hot water onto a cold glass. Can you talk more about this? How to slowly adjust from very subtle sensation transition safely to daily life, especially from a deep meditation. Thanks. This is important. Once one gets into the meditation and gets some very quiet meditation experiences, sometimes when you come out afterwards it's very coarse to even have the sound of a bell rung. Ding! It's kind of coming from quietness into noise very fast, which is one of the reasons why whenever you do come out from a deep meditation, come out slowly, come out gently. One good way of doing that, if you're by yourself, is to tell yourself, I have to come out in 10 seconds, not immediately. You bring yourself out slowly. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and up to 10. Then you come out. The reason they do that, that's very much like when people get hypnotized. I don't know if you've seen people going into hypnotic trances. When they take you out afterwards, they'll say, okay, come out. They said, you will open your eyes and come out of meditation after the count of 10. 10, 9, 8. And you do need that slowness to let the mind know what you're doing and come out gently. If you do practice your meditation and you do often get into quiet states of mind, then what to do is sometimes you miss appointments that way. Even once, I tell some of my stories, doing walking meditation. When I was doing walking meditation, this was in Thailand, I was a young monk, I was getting very quiet. And sometimes as you're getting quiet, you may not realize just how quiet you are. I was walking in this main hall in a temple in Bangkok, Wat Saket, and I was just focusing on the movement of my feet, and then I heard this sound like 100 miles away. Brahm so. That's the full name. That's really strange. Brahm so. And I realized that somebody was calling my name, but it appeared at such a long distance away. And then when I paid attention to it, I realized it was another monk shouting in my ear hole, but that distance away. Brahm so. And then of course you realize, why is he doing that? It was because that I'd agreed to go to an appointment, I'd forgotten all about it, and he was sent to come and get me. And it took me a long time, maybe 10 or 20 seconds, to get my brain moving into that area. And then, fortunately, because he was a monk himself, he knew, how I felt. He was so quiet and so peaceful. Brahm so. And then I had to turn my head around, to see his face, to be able to answer him. This is going fast. It took about 10 seconds to move my attention and into his eyes. And then I said, what? It was a wonderful experience because it just showed me how peaceful I had become. And it was like all the sounds went so far away from me. I could still hear them, but it was like listening to them from a great distance. And that monk gave me that time to actually basically go up the gears in my brain so I could hear him. And that was one of the reasons why, if you go into a deep meditation, you're very quiet. Enjoy it, it's wonderful. But to actually come out, you've got to take a few seconds. Okay, here is my weird stories. I told some of these earlier in another retreat about this Vietnamese monk who taught a retreat, a 9-day retreat over in Sydney. He was a Vietnamese Theravada monk. And usually on these 9-day retreats, we start with a meditation, usually from 7:30 to 8, and then give the opening talk, and then have an early night. People have just arrived, some come from overseas. So this monk, he went to start the meditation, 7:30, sitting very still, very peaceful. When it came to 8 o'clock, he never rang the gong, he never did anything, he was still sitting perfectly still. When it got, so he didn't give any talk. When it got to 9 o'clock, he was still sitting there, perfectly still. 9:30, all the people in Sydney who came to that meditation retreat decided to go to bed. So they went and had a nap, or sleep for the night. When they got up in the morning, they saw he was still sitting there. He hadn't moved. That monk did not move for 8 days. Didn't go to toilet, didn't drink any water, certainly no food. He was just sitting peacefully there for 8 days. I'm not making this up, this is true. And after the 8 days, he opened his eyes, and the first thing he did was to say, I apologize, sorry. It's my mistake. Because what we normally do, if we expect a deep meditation like that, is to tell ourselves, I have to come out by 1:30. I must come out by 1:30 p.m. I've got people to teach. If you don't believe me, tonight when you go to sleep, you don't need to set your alarm clock. Suppose, I'm not sure what time you have to get up, suppose you have to get up at 6 a.m., is that too early? 7 a.m.? I say 7 a.m., okay. So set your alarm for 7:05, so you don't feel afraid. And then tell yourself, when you lay down in bed with your head on the pillow, I must wake up at 7 a.m. I must wake up at 7 a.m. In your own words, your own language, I must wake up at 7 a.m. Then forget about it. When you wake up in the morning, you'll open your eyes, turn the light on, look at the clock. You'll be 2 or 3 minutes either side of 7. The first time I tried this, just as a young student, it was ridiculous. It doesn't work, but it does. So a lot of times, if you do have an appointment even, instead of worrying about, I must go to that appointment, make that telephone call at a certain time, you just sit down and tell your mind, I must get up at, or I must ring Gerald at 1 p.m. I must ring Gerald at 1 p.m. I must ring Gerald at 1 p.m. And forget about it. And at 1 p.m. you think, oh, there's something I must do. I must ring Gerald. If you do that, you don't tend to miss any appointments. And your memory becomes very, very powerful. You know how to use memory. You're programming your mind. It's a wonderful thing to do. Those people who, you may be sick, you may have to take this medicine at a certain time of the day. How do you always have to remember that you have to take this medication, this medication? They're very similar, aren't they? But anyway, you tell yourself, at 9 o'clock in the morning, say 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I must take this pill. 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 And what you find out what happens about that time, you feel something I must be doing. Oh yeah, I've got to take that pill. And you'd be surprised how well that works. And after a while, when you trust it, you don't have to worry so much. That's one of the reasons. Gerald took me for lunch today. Did I eat a lot? How come I'm so fat? The reason is because I need to learn how to worry more. When you worry, you lose weight. Is that true, Carol? Okay. Dear Ajahn, did I answer the question properly? So that's actually how, take it slowly when you transition. Dear Ajahn, I have 3 kids, 8, 7, 6-year-old, and as a parent I have a lot of emotions while raising them. Is there any practical suggestion that would allow us, both parents and kids, to be mindful together? You know your children will follow the parents. So, I always remember this single mother in Australia, that she had 2 young kids about this age, and so she said that every time she sat down to meditate, they would climb all over her, pull her hair. Mummy, mummy, I need to go to toilet. Mummy, mummy, I need a glass of water. You know what little kids at that age are, 8, 7, 6. So one day, Mummy decided she needed her meditation. So she sat down and she made a resolution again. I don't care what my kids say or do, I'm going to sit here until my half-an-hour meditation is finished. And as soon as she sat down and closed her eyes, the 2 kids climbed all over her, pulling her hair. Mummy, 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 mummy. But for once she did not respond. She just sat there. And then I was so impressed how innovative and how smart kids are. Mummy, 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 Stephen has turned on the gas. Mummy, 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 Jane has got a knife out of the kitchen. I don't know what you would do. But anyway, the mummy decided, I don't care if they blow up their house. I don't care if they cut each other up to bits. I need some peace to meditate. So she meditated. She didn't move. And then the kids, they didn't know what to do next. So when Mummy came out of meditation half an hour later, the house was still there. There was no blood on the floor. They were playing happily by themselves, quietly, in a corner. And from that day on, she'd won her half an hour of meditation whenever she wanted. And the kids didn't mind, because once she had done her meditation, the children would always say, as sometimes people who come to my meditation class over in Australia, they said, I didn't feel like coming today. I didn't want to meditate. I'm too tired. I've been working so hard all day. But my kid told me, Mummy, are you going to meditation today? No, I don't feel like it. Mummy, you must go to meditation. I'm tired. Mummy, you must go to meditation. So the mothers actually, they tell me, honestly, they were sent to the meditation class by their kids. So why? Why, darling? Why do I have to go to meditation? Because you're a much nicer mummy when you come home from meditation. Ask your kids that. If you can meditate, you're much more sensitive, aware. You can understand much more of how your children are thinking. You don't worry about them, they look after themselves. And when you meditate like that, Your kids, sometimes you open your eyes and they're sitting quietly next to you. They get the energy. If they don't, maybe you may have a dog or a cat at home. They come and sit. Dogs especially, more than cats. They will sit quietly next to you. They are sensitive. Yeah, you get lots of emotions. But make sure they're positive emotions and teach those to your children. Sometimes you learn those, not so much from telling them, but they feel it from you. What to do when feeling physical sensations becoming too overwhelming during meditation? Depends what the physical sensations are. If it's like a burning sensation, open your mind, the hall may be on fire. Don't be stupid. Coward is laughing. But a lot of times those physical sensations during the meditations, you're perfectly safe, there's nothing much happening. But a lot of times our mind exaggerates things, amplifies things. You know, I love this, how our perceptions get changed during meditation. I remember after meditation, I was in one of the jungles in Thailand somewhere, and I remember just sitting by myself. When it gets dark, you know, you can't see anything. So when you hear some sounds, there are some dangerous animals in the jungle. So I heard an animal coming towards me, a jungle animal. So I paid attention to it, not to my breath, but to the sound of the animal. And I quickly assessed it. It's not a big animal, and it's quite safe. So I closed my eyes and carried on meditating. And in the next couple of minutes, it came a bit closer. And so I attended to the sound of the animal again. And I realized by the sound of, you know, how it squashed the leaves in the jungle, how it broke some of the twigs. I said, actually, that's like a medium-sized animal. It could be like a small civet cat or like a mouse deer or something. It was in Thailand. And so I thought, that's not dangerous. So I attended to my breath again, and I could hear it getting closer. As it came closer to me, I realized I totally underestimated it. This was a big animal. And the dangerous animals in Thailand are, you know, tigers, bears, something like that. So I became scared. So I got out a flashlight and searched for it, this flashlight. And I found it. I saw it wasn't that far away from me. It was a tiny mouse. I was embarrassed, but also it was such a wonderful experience. It showed that when you are afraid of something, the sound of a mouse becomes like the sound of a monk-eating tiger. That's why I say fear kills so many people, much more than real tigers. And I told this story, I think, yesterday, you know, that once I came face to face with a tiger. It's about as far as you are away from me. The girl sitting right in front of me here. Was I scared? It was weird. I wasn't scared at all. I was totally relaxed like I am now. And there was a big tiger looking at me. And why was I not scared? Would you be scared? No, you wouldn't, because it was in a zoo. And there's metal bars in front of me. Thank you for those who've heard that story, not telling what it was. So, a lot of times, I know that those feelings get exaggerated, and that's why they become overwhelming. It's not the feeling itself, it's just the way we perceive it. That's one of the reasons why it's lovely just to forget about it. You're perfectly safe. Even when you get into some of these deep meditations, you become invulnerable. Okay, I'm going into some of the deep stuff because some of you heard me tell all the ordinary stories. One of the disciples over in Sri Lanka, because I can only go over to Sri Lanka, only a few weeks every couple of years, that this gentleman, he was a doctor, and he was using some of these meditation techniques to help people who were sick. But he also had one of the followers who's a very good meditator. Could always get into these deep meditations. Lay person, but had great abilities. And so the doctor decided to do an experiment on him. When he was in deep, he never told this gentleman what he was about to do. That was an important part of the process. He never told him, but when this young man got into a deep meditation, he rolled up the meditator's sleeve and he got out disinfectant, rubbed it on his shoulder, then got out a sharp scalpel to see if he could make an incision in this gentleman's arm. So he videoed it too. To this doctor's great surprise, the scalpel would not go into the flesh. It was a sharp scalpel. Doesn't matter how he tried to cut the skin of this young man, it just wouldn't cut. And afterwards, he took this. Please, I tell these stories. If it's a joke, I will let you know. This is not a joke. This is true. And then, when they came out of meditation, the doctor told him, because they trusted each other, he said, okay, never mind. But the doctor said, can I try again? Next time you go into deep meditation, but this time may I have your permission, to make an incision? He said yes. And so the next time that he went into a deep meditation, the doctor asked beforehand. And so he did the same procedure, rolled up the sleeve, disinfected the arm. And this time, the scalpel went into the skin. The fellow never felt anything at all. So the doctor, again, disinfected it, stitched it up, put a bandage on top. And all the time, this gentleman never knew at all what was going on. He was deep inside. In deep meditation, you are invulnerable. That's one of the reasons why you've got all these lovely stories. There's one over in the suttas, the teachings of the Buddha. And that is where this monk was in the jungle somewhere meditating alone. And when he was meditating, he got so still that a couple of villagers, searching for mushrooms or herbs, they saw this monk deep in the jungle, sitting perfectly still. And they went up to him and they found he wasn't even breathing. And they thought, oh my goodness, this monk must have died. And they were just very respectful of monks. So what should we do now? They thought, if we leave him here overnight, that's when the jungle animals will come out and they'll eat him. And that's not good. So they were in the forest. There's plenty of wood there. So they collected some dry wood and put the venerable on top of that dry wood and lit the wood. They decided to cremate him. They did some Buddhist chanting as much as they knew, and they cremated this monk. So they thought. The wood was all alight, and then they had other things to do. You're busy. So they went to collect their mushrooms or whatever it was. And when they went into their village, they told everybody what had happened. So you can imagine what they felt that following morning when that same monk walked into their village for alms. And not even his robe was charred. And that happens. There was another monk I usually don't. This is contemporary monk. I have, because I'm an old monk, I meet these monks, they tell their stories, and I knew him very well, but he's passed away now. His name was Sudamo, Indonesian monk. And the way he got into some deep meditation, he wanted to be a yogi, just a rishi, just someone who was a quiet meditator. He went into the jungles of Java. This was about 50 years ago, 45 years ago. And there were jungles in those days in Java. There's just buildings now in Java. It's a very populated island. But anyway, he went into a quiet place there, sat down, and the way he described it to me, he became very peaceful. And as he was peaceful, he saw this star come right towards him. These are what we call in meditation the nimittas. If you want to read more about them, they're in sort of some of the books written. But then, the way he told me, his English wasn't that good. He said he married that star. You don't marry stars. Meditators don't get married. They're kind of celibate. But what he meant, he united with it. He went into this beautiful meditation for many days. And when he came out of that meditation, he noticed the way he was sitting looked very different than beforehand. He checked with the villagers. He'd been meditating in there for about 5 or 6 days, and there was a flash flood. He'd been underwater for many days. But even though he was underwater, it didn't matter to him in his deep meditations. He was perfectly safe. And that really impressed people. So the only reason I say those things is because you don't need to worry. If there's some big war in Hong Kong, get into deep meditation quickly. Or if there's a tsunami coming, sit down and meditate. You get a deep meditation, you're perfectly safe. Guaranteed. So, how do I get onto that? Okay, your kids. The physical sensation during the meditation. Sometimes the experience of a strong physical sensation is just that your mind is exaggerating, is amplifying what you are feeling. Many times, especially when you are sitting still and you're starting to get peaceful, so many people have the feeling like there's ants crawling all over your body, and it's very intense. But if that's the case, there are no ants, in this room. It's just how it feels. The ordinary sensations you have now are amplified. It's like looking in a microscope. They appear so much stronger than usual. But that's a really good sign. That's usually just before your sense of the body turns off and you're really peaceful. So if that does happen, just be with it. Be kind to it. It'll soon go. Hopefully that answers the question. Because sometimes these strong sensations are just precursors of really beautiful experiences. Thank you for your gorgeous talk, as it has always been. I do talk about different things sometimes. Once, where is he? This Albert over there. Sometimes he called you Albert Einstein. That reminded me of one of the stories. Like you have someone like Gerald in the back over there. And Gerald, he takes me to all of the talks which I give here in Hong Kong. So he's heard all these stories many, 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 many times. So if, ever, I don't turn up, get Gerald to give the talk. You just have to repeat what he's already heard. And that reminded me of this tale about Albert Einstein. He started to get famous, this is many years ago. And so the universities on the east coast of the United States invited him to go on a lecture tour of these major universities. But to be able to travel there, you had to go in a boat. The aircraft were not really able to cross the Atlantic, not passenger aircraft. So he got on a boat, and they met him in New York, and they arranged a driver and a nice car to take him to one university after another. And so the same driver, listened to what he said. He gave the same lecture to every university. And so the driver said one day, I've heard your talk so many times, I think I could give it and no one would know. And Albert Einstein said, yeah, why not? Let's give it a try. So before they got to the next university, Princeton or something, they swapped seats. Now remember, in these days with not much communication, no TV yet, no internet, the only pictures they'd seen of Albert Einstein was in newspapers. And so this driver, pretending to be Albert Einstein, just said hello, and they fell for it. And Albert Einstein had the driver's cap on. They were quite surprised that Albert Einstein spoke with a Brooklyn accent, but they never heard him before. And so the driver, was given a nice dinner, with the faculty members. Albert had to, just do what he could to get something to eat. And then the driver gave the lecture. He'd heard it many, many, many times. And so he gave a perfect lecture. They really thought he was Albert Einstein, even though he was only a taxi driver. And after the talk, there was one professor there, got a bit dubious, and so decided to ask a question of this man pretending to be Albert Einstein. A very deep question to test out if it really was Albert. And the question, said the question, and the taxi driver, pretending to be Albert Einstein, replied, "That is such an easy question. Even my driver in the back could answer that one." And that's how he got away with it. So thank you for giving the opportunity to ask that. This morning you mentioned that being mindful and kindful to your body parts. When I meditated this morning, I felt a blockage, pain in my bottom neck area. Since I was meditating, not sure if I could use my hand to massage that area, just focus my breath on that area. If you feel a blockage there, again, just focus your mind on that. It actually works. Look, let's just try something. Your head. Just close your eyes. How does your head feel? I'm looking at my forehead now. I can feel a bit of tightness on it. And give it such kindness. Like for those of you who are mothers who have children, that's like your child. So, my little child on my forehead, may you be happy and well. Mummy's here. You don't have to worry about anything. And you imagine yourself stroking the forehead of your child. But the forehead is you now. And as you're stroking it, I can feel my forehead relax. When you give something loving kindness, it relaxes and relaxes. And the tension I felt in my forehead, really, 1 minute ago, is no longer there. Okay, you can open your eyes now. I don't know if that worked for you, but it certainly worked for me. You can relax your own body. Again, those of you who are mothers or fathers, when one of your kids is upset, they don't feel well, they can't explain to you exactly what's going on. But nevertheless, just mummy or daddy being there just makes all the difference. they feel safe, they can relax. And that's what you're doing to your own body. Look, kindness and wisdom is here. Tummy, you can relax. I've done that many times to my own body. And that's why I've been pretty healthy. I never actually continued that story of the last time I was in hospital. It was how many years ago? 32 years ago. And it was only because I was tired. But it's wonderful being a monk, going into hospital. The first thing when I checked in, that they said, "Where's your pajamas?" And I said, "I'm a monk. I don't have pajamas." And they said, "But you're supposed to bring your pajamas, but you can't bring something you don't have. It's these robes or naked. Make your choice." And I said, "Okay, you can wear your robes." But then when I went into the ward for 6 days, there was 3 other men in the ward. That was okay. They're good friends. They became good friends. But the nurses would come in. They'd see this bald-headed man just in robes, not pajamas. But that's not what really intrigued them. My doctor at the time, it's a Dr. Mendes in Sri Lanka. He was a top gynecologist. And they said, "What are you doing in hospital under a gynecologist in the men's ward?" We have a lot of good fun with that. Have you ever, all you guys here, have you ever been under a gynecologist in hospital? That was good fun. Anyway, I just rested, and after a while, that tiredness disappeared. So you can massage that area, but you've got to know the feeling first of all. And as you massage it with so much kindness, so my bottom neck area, yeah, you can massage it if you wish, but that doesn't work. Just look at it. Massage it with your mind. Muscles, may you be happy and well. It does actually work. Does that make sense? Is suicide a sin? What is suicide? It's an intentional decision and following through with it to end your life. That's one definition. So, I don't know how many of you are Buddhist. Did the Buddhist commit suicide? He knew his last meal and no other monk could take it. He took it. 3 months beforehand, he was approached by Mara. Mara is like a personification of a power freak who wants to control everything. And just when the Buddha, I'm not making this up, this is in the suttas, just after the Buddha became enlightened, Mara came up to the Buddha and said to him, "Okay, I concede you're out of my power now, you're fully enlightened, but just pass away, don't teach, because teaching is very burdensome. People never listen to your teaching, they always do something else." And of course they always do something else. Just like precepts. This is in Theravada Buddhism, we always give precepts. The 5 precepts: not deliberately killing, stealing, committing adultery, lying, or taking alcohol or drugs, or non-medicinal drugs. So I remember just many times people would take the 5 precepts, but how many times would they keep them? I remember just going to Thailand and seeing people that always put their hands up in Anjali when they were taking the precepts, and sometimes they would do this. One finger would be down. You know what that meant? Only keeping 4 precepts today. Sometimes 2 fingers down. They would still chant all the precepts. And I went to Sri Lanka, And I asked, how many precepts are you keeping today? And they said 13. 13 precepts, that's amazing. I've never heard that before. What's 13 precepts? You know, on some holy days, the lay people keep 8 precepts, which means just like the monks, they don't watch any entertainment, they don't eat in the evening, they don't wear any makeup or jewelry. And that's the 8 precepts which people usually take on the holy days, you know, Wesak and stuff. So some are keeping 13 precepts. And how do you do that? Well, I keep 8 precepts in the morning and 5 precepts in the afternoon. Afterwards. It's a waste of time. It's only, the 8 precepts are only really hard in the afternoon or evening. So just get 8 precepts in the morning when it doesn't really matter. And then 5 precepts in the afternoon. So a lot of times people try and, you know, bend the rules. So anyway, what am I getting in on this? Anyway, those, is it this one? Oh, the suicide one. So anyway, the Buddha can't lie. So he made that resolution. It's difficult to teach, but nevertheless, it's also really, really, really good fun. Even today, at lunch, you know what happened? This lady came in to the restaurant and said, "Are you Ajahn Brahm?" And I said, "Yes, at least the last time I looked I was." and she's another person who just listens to these talks on YouTube. And because of that, she said it saved so many problems in her life. And she just wanted to have a photo op and say hello. And it's difficult being a teacher, but you also get these wonderful, wonderful responses. And so, you know, she was very thankful. Or just like that story when I was in Sheffield recently. And I was going a retreat, Sheffield in England, and I was going to a teacher retreat. So when I go there, I don't go shopping, got no money, don't go touring around, I'm not interested. Even in Hong Kong, there's probably many places in Hong Kong I've never seen, but I don't come here to tour around, I come here to teach. And so anyway, I was walking in the centre of Sheffield, and the council was doing some road work. And as they were doing this road work, this Englishman from East Yorkshireman, he was working for the council in a big backhoe bulldozer, and he opened his window, he's making a lot of noise in those big earth-moving machines, and he shouted at me, "You are the spitting image of Ajahn Brahm in Australia." That's what he said. And I said, I can understand that because I am Ajahn Brahm, but in Sheffield today. It was really cute. He stopped his machine, turned it off, and just stopped all the work, you know, done by the council that morning, climbed down the ladder for photo op and asked them questions. Everyone else had to stop as well. So if you ever want to understand why do these road works always go on and on and on and on, it's people like me who stop them. He was just listening to all these talks on YouTube. And you see somebody you know you really respect and say thank you to, they have to sort of stop and just take a photo op, like even today. So there's difficulty teaching, but wonderful side effects. So Mara asked the Buddha, you know, take it easy, no need to teach, just, you know, pass away now. And the Buddha said, no. I will not pass away until I have established a strong sangha of bhikkhus, monks, that's like me, strong community of laymen, and lay women, and a strong sangha of bhikkhunis, nuns, fully ordained. And then 45 years later, Mara came again and said, look, you know, you've done your mission. There's so many hundreds of enlightened monks and nuns, lay people to support them and everything. You fulfilled your promise. And the Buddha said, yes. So now's the time to abandon your life faculty. And the Buddha said, okay, keeping his promise. He said, in 3 months' time, in Kusinara, I will pass away. He decided to pass away. Is that suicide? He could have lived much longer. And I say that because sometimes people think suicide is a sin. It depends why, who you are, what you're doing. And why people suicide with a healthy love life, healthy look life, and friends. It seems the person is quite all right in the eyes of others. Absolutely. It doesn't, you know, you can't judge another person. And a lot of times you don't know what they go through. One of the reasons why people suicide is the 2 bad bricks in the wall story. When I first went to the Chinese university in Hong Kong, that was one of the stories I told. The first building I made, I laid all the bricks. And afterwards, when I looked at it, 2 bricks were crooked. And I was ashamed of them. The first building, I was a theoretical physicist before. I didn't know much about laying bricks, but I tried my best. I was a perfectionist, and I thought because 2 bricks were crooked, I needed to destroy that wall to start over again. I did actually ask the other monk with me at the time, can we get some dynamite and blow it up so I can start again? Can we get a bulldozer to push it over so I can start again? 2 bad bricks spoiled that whole wall. But we couldn't afford a bulldozer or any dynamite. I was stuck with it. In those days, we still had a few supporters. And they said, anything you need, Ajahn Brahm? Some dynamite? And they said, no way. I know, Carol, you just asked me, anything you need, Ajahn Brahm? Some dynamite? Take it to Australia? No, I can't do that. But so I was stuck with that. And it was only afterwards when this gentleman came and they saw that wall and they said, that's a beautiful wall. And I could not believe what he was saying. I said, have you left your spectacles in your car? Are you vision impaired? Can't you see those 2 crooked bricks? And what they said was, yes. I can see those 2 crooked bricks, but I can also see the 998 perfect bricks. And that's a lot of time why people suicide. 1 or 2 mistakes in their life, which they overemphasize, which they take way out of proportion. Not just suicide, but how people destroy their own happiness. When the first time I put that story in one of my books, the first book which I wrote, then somehow or other people in Bangkok got hold of it, especially in the Australian embassy in Bangkok. And I was sent this wonderful letter with a free air ticket to go to Bangkok and back to Perth. No, it was any old time I could go there. And it was sent by 4 couples who were associated with the Australian embassy. 2 were already divorced, 2 had separated, and because they read that book, they all came together again. The couple which was divorced realized it was only over 2 bad bricks. That's not a reason to destroy their relationship. 2 mistakes. So they came together again. The 2 which were separated also came together again. So 4 families were reunited just to that story. That's why they wanted to meet me and say thank you. Why is it 1 bad brick or 2 bad bricks we want to kill ourselves? Why is it that 1 or 2 mistakes in life that we want to divorce? That story is very famous now in Australia. So famous that in our local prison where I give talks, actually the other monks are doing the talks these days, there's one person there, he was in prison for murder. And the other monks were telling me, he started around saying now, it was only 2 murders, it was only 2 people I killed, it was only 2 bad bricks. What about all the 998 people he didn't kill? You may laugh at that for him. I realised I was so impressed that when he does finish his sentence, he'll come out and get a proper life and never do that bad thing ever again. That is actually how we can see things like suicide or the bad actions which each one of us have done. There's 1 or 2 bad bricks in the world. There's so many good bricks. That is put in perspective. So if you know someone who has committed suicide, it's not a smart thing to do, but nevertheless, you do not judge a life by the way they die. You judge it by how they lived. This one kid, 17 years of age, doing well at school. Nothing, his parents, his friends, his school teachers didn't know anything why he would do this. But one morning when his family woke up, they found him on a rope on the veranda. He'd hung himself. And they were devastated. Straight away they said, is this a sin? Is my son going to go to hell because of this? And I asked him, what was he doing? He was in school. He was going to sit for the university exams in a few months' time. But he was doing well at school. He would certainly get into university. But I asked him, how many subjects was he studying? They said about 5. How many exam papers do you have to complete? In each subject. They said maybe 2, like 10 exams. How many questions in each paper? I said, we're not really sure, but let's say 8 in each paper. So suppose he had to answer questions to get into university. Suppose the first 79 of those questions were answered perfectly, and only the last question he stuffed up big time. Would that mean you can't go to university? Did you mess up the last question and 79 other questions were answered perfectly? 79 out of 80? Would kids get into university in Hong Kong with a score like that? So they said, just because he messed up the last question in his life, doesn't mean he has to go to a hell realm. Because everything else he did in life, he was a very, very good son, very kind, very respectful. So when you have some wisdom, it's not a good thing to commit suicide. You're just focusing on a bad brick. It doesn't mean you have to be punished. When I said that, his parents, apparently his younger brother was so shocked that he actually stopped speaking after his brother had died that way. But after hearing that story, it was put in perspective. And he said, well, I miss my brother, but at least I know he's not going to go to hell. Understand? You still okay with me talking like this? Okay. Another couple of questions. And then we can do some Actually, it'd be nice to have What time is it here? Clock the wrong way round or what? What time have you got? Okay. Oh, there's 20 past 2. Okay. This is Gerald's clock. And I didn't know where the 12 hand was. Okay. 20 past 2. Yeah, we can maybe have a break in a few moments after the last question. Then we come back to some meditation. Is that okay? Yeah, okay, because some of you have to go to the toilet. We don't actually call it toilets in monasteries. We call it letting go rooms. I've been learning to practice mindfulness for almost a year. My wife sometimes says I have been wasting my time to do so because she does not see how mindfulness can be applied in our relationship. And it's very easy to see how in a relationship you can practice mindfulness. You look in, say, your wife's face. She's giving you all sorts of visual clues to how she feels. And after a while you can make use of those. You know that when she's feeling peaceful. You know when she's feeling tense. And it's one of the reasons why some guys are just so dumb. They ask questions at the wrong time. If you've got a very serious question to ask your partner, take him out for dinner. Take him out for dinner, dress up nicely, and wait until the last course. And at the last course you can ask him anything. He's relaxed and happy. The problem with that story is I told that to my monks many times. And so now they wait until I've had a good lunch. And then they came up to me. Ajahn Brahm. So Gerald, now you know how to invite me to do this and do that for Biff next year. Take me to a good lunch and have a look to make sure I enjoyed it. And if, Carol, you can see that Ajahn Brahm really enjoyed his lunch, then you can ask me anything. And I'm and that's with other people, your boss at work. It's crazy, people aren't mindful enough to see the state of mind of their boss. And so they ask them questions at the wrong time. So see if you can notice those times your bosses feel so peaceful and so happy. And when they do, how are you feeling, boss? Oh, thank you for telling me that. I feel great today. And then you can ask for the raise in your salary. Obviously, for you, when you're in a good mood, aren't you more likely to say yes? So the mindfulness, first of all, in your relationship, find out the right time and place to ask for things or confess things. I understand why. She says, because I'm an impatient person who lets my emotions lash out at times. Oh, those things. There's never a good time to allow your emotions to lash out. Because, your partner in life, they're never perfect. Sometimes I have done marriage counselling. I remember this woman just complaining about her husband. So come in and let the husband be quiet, husband, listen to this. And all his faults. I said, okay, now wife, be quiet. Now husband, what about your wife's faults? And he said all of the things which his wife did, which he didn't like. And after he'd finished, I said, look, now I've heard both of you tell about the faults in each other. And my opinion is that you're both faulty beings, so you're a good match. And they laughed too, because we can see the faults in others. It's very hard to see the faults in oneself. And number two, it doesn't matter if you have some faults. What's important is you learn to love somebody. If you love someone who's perfect, it will be a waste of time. When you love someone who's imperfect, that's where you learn and grow together. Have you seen anyone who's perfect in this world? I told this story somewhere recently about the man. He was from a very wealthy family. He was very good looking, and he was very well educated. And so he decided to try and find out a perfect wife for himself. So he went to look over in New York, and he looked all over New York. He found this model. Oh, she was single, but she was absolutely gorgeous. So he went out with her, and then after a while, he had to dump her. She was not perfect enough. She had no education. So, not really perfect enough. So then he went to London, and while he was in London, he found this another woman, even more beautiful than the model, and with 3 PhDs. She was a genius. So he went out with her, and then she invited him home for dinner, and the food which she cooked was terrible. She was smart, she was beautiful, but she couldn't cook. So then he came to Hong Kong. And there he saw the most beautiful woman in the whole world. And she didn't just have 3 PhDs. She was a professor in many departments in Hong Kong University. And not only that, she was a Michelin 3-star chef who had 4 or 5 restaurants here in Hong Kong. And she was perfect. And so he proposed to her, the most perfect woman in the whole world. She refused him. Why? He asked. And she said, because I am looking for the perfect man. And of course he wasn't. Anyway, I thought you'd like that story because I said Hong Kong in the end. When I tell that story, if I happen to be in Malaysia, the most perfect woman in Kuala Lumpur. Anyway, emotion lash out at times. In doing my best to apply mindfulness in my life, please tell me how I should let my wife know I won't give up learning mindfulness, and how I should keep the emotion in practicing. If you're really learning the mindfulness, she will see it. Obviously, you're not doing it correctly. Otherwise, she would see it. Just like kids see it. Mummy, you're such a lovely mummy after you've done your meditation. Or one of these other stories. This guy in Australia, and he always wanted to go just for a weekend meditation retreat. So he asked his wife, can I go on a weekend meditation retreat? It doesn't cost much. And his wife said, of course not. You know, on the weekend we've got to look after the kids, you've got to clean out the shed, you've got to help me with the shopping and putting it all away again. It's a busy time for us on the weekend. No, you can't go on the meditation retreat. Don't be so selfish. No. And he was a very smart husband. He just said, okay, darling. And then he helped her that weekend. And then a couple of weekends later, when there was another retreat, can I go on a weekend meditation retreat, darling? Of course not. My mother's coming this weekend. You've got to clean up the garden. There's so many things to do. We've got to take our kids to play sport. No, you can't go. It's too busy. No. Okay. And instead he stayed at home and helped. And this went on for about 4 or 5 times, so he told me. And then one time, it's a weekend meditation retreat. Darling, can I go on a weekend meditation this week? And she was so frustrated. She said, okay, you go on your stupid meditation retreat and leave me with the kids, the shopping, the cleaning, the cooking and everything else. You just go off and do your retreat. He took that as a yes. And so off he went. She was mad at him. But when he came back on a Sunday afternoon, she was, this is a true story, so impressed with how he changed just with one weekend. How peaceful, how kind, how sensitive he'd become. The next time there was a retreat, he never needed to ask. She made the booking, paid the money, and sent him off. He was a much nicer husband after he'd gone on retreat. It's like your car, if you have a car. It's really awful when it, sometimes there's something wrong with it, and it doesn't work as well as it's supposed to. So what do? You send it to the garage to have a tune-up. That's like sending your husband to a meditation retreat. Give him a tune-up. And when you can't use him when he's on a retreat, when he comes back, he's a much more reliable vehicle. We're just talking, mentioned the Oriental Hotel. I've been there a few times because I used to know the manager, was a disciple. And I was fascinated when in an aircraft going one place to another place to see that the Oriental Hotel that year had won the prize for the best hotel in the world. And I interviewed the manager. How come you've won this great prize? He said one thing he did. This was in Thailand. And he said that every year I send every one of my staff, I don't take it off their holidays, for 1 week to a monastery on a retreat. And the interviewer said, are you just some Buddhist evangelist, trying to make everyone in your hotel Buddhist? He said, no, even Christians, Muslims go down there. And when they come back, they're much better cooks, cleaners. This is a hospitality service. And they're far more sensitive to the people they look after in this hotel. It's actually in the company's interest that they go on this retreat once a year for 1 week at our cost. So, when you go home, please tell your manager, the boss of the place you work, Ajahn Brahm said this really works. So can we implement this on our new business strategy for our company? Why would people doubt that? Especially in the hospitality industry. You need to be able to get people to connect with the clients, to be kind to them, to be kind to one another. I should say this about Cathay Pacific. They haven't been doing well recently. This is not my fault. I try to save them. Because there's quite a few Thai people on the staff of the flight attendants. So they invited me to give a talk, and the HR manager came along. And the HR manager heard me talk about the Emperor's 3 Questions story. When is the most important time? Now. It's the only time you ever have. Who is the most important person? Who? No, that's wrong. Wrong answer. Excellent, thank you. Have you heard the story before? Yeah, okay. This was actually from Leo Tolstoy, in a story about the Emperor's 3 Questions. The one right in front of you is the most important person in the whole world. You're the most important person right now. Now you are. Now you are. And there's a wonderful way of connecting with people. How many times, if you're a flight attendant or a captain or a person checking people in, at these counters, have you ever felt you're not really important to them? They're busy just trying to get rid of you. Please, I hope you never think I do that to you. Because when I read that story, it was so important, I tried to practice it and learn how important it is. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're right in front of me, you're the most important person in the whole world. Then you can communicate. And the most important thing to do is to care. to care about the other person. And the director, the HR director, was so impressed that he asked, is it okay if we teach this in the courses which we give to every flight attendant, every check-in person in the airline? And they did. But that wasn't the reason why they had economic trouble for a while. There were other causes. I don't take any responsibility. Okay. It's a lovely thing to do. If it's that wife you thinks the mindfulness is not working, try Emperor's 3 questions to make sure that our mindfulness is not just alone. It's in this moment. Doesn't matter how busy you are. If that's your wife right in front of you, she's the most important person in the whole world. Care.